I'm Sarah. I'm the Associate Director for Admissions here at Mary Wash. We are currently in a Zoom meeting format, so you are welcome to turn your video on and mic on if you would like, since it's going to be a kind of personal conversation. But you can also, if you're more comfortable, you can use the chat too. Oh, good. Hi. How are you doing, Addison?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. Are you a junior or a senior?
I'm a junior.
You're a junior. Okay, so you're just getting started with your search process then.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Megan is with us. You can see her mask there. She'll probably stay off camera a little bit. She's in our admissions welcome center today. So there's another staff member in there with her, which is why she's got her mask on, because she's on campus. But she is a current student as well. So we can chat a little bit about the application process and some things as you're getting started with your search. And as you have questions, please just interrupt me and we'll cover all of them. Where are you from, Addison?
From Richmond.
From Richmond? Okay, perfect. I work with the students from the Richmond area. Are you in Hanover, Henrico, Chesterfield City?
Chesterfield.
Chesterfield, even better, because I have Chesterfield County. So awesome. So I work with all the students in Chesterfield County. So I'll be the person that works with you all the way through this process this year and next year. Always can be a point of contact with you. I'll probably have Megan throw my email into the chat for you so that you can just copy that and have that written down as well. So this presentation's kind of been set up to be a little fun and to help you get to know a little bit more about the application process as we go through. We in admissions and in higher education in general, we really like our terminology. So I'm sure you've started to come across some things, uses of acronyms and words and phrases that you're like, that's not exactly what that means, but they have a meaning within higher education. So one of the big things and what you're working on right now is your search. So hopefully you have started to take a look at some different colleges. Obviously, you've found Mary Washington and are joining us for our virtual open house, but you've started to keep a list of schools that you think would be a good fit for you. And you're searching based on size, based on academic majors, maybe location, and just kind of, or the community, and figuring it out from there. So that talks a little bit about your search process. When we talk about profile, we're really talking about the academic standards that the university has, such as curriculum grades, strengths and weaknesses, what we're looking for, and how other students in the past have done. So like our average weighted GPA is about a 3.7. That's part of our academic profile, right? The average set of scores, that's part of the profile. For testing, standardized testing, SAT or ACT. I'm sure you've heard it over and over again. We'll talk a lot about testing. Mary Washington is what we call a test choice school, meaning you are not required to submit SAT or ACT, especially with COVID-19 and the pandemic. We don't want students putting themselves in harm's way because they think they need a test. For us, you truly don't need a test. If you are comfortable and want to take the SAT or ACT, that is purely your choice and up to you at this point. You'll hear the phrase self-reported a lot when it comes to academic or testing information. I cover kind of test optional, test choice. Holistic review is how we review our applicants in the admissions process. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Demonstrated interest, what you're doing right now is demonstrating interest with the university. So attending virtual events, coming to campus if you're comfortable for an information session or tour, but really engaging with us via email, via text message, on the phone, all of that kind of stuff. That is part of demonstrating interest with the university. You'll hear the term merit scholarship. This is something that you'll be automatically considered for next fall when you apply. So don't worry, there's no extra steps there, but it's really providing you a scholarship based on your success in academics throughout high school. And we offer those for both students that are applying with test scores and without test scores. So no matter which way you go on that test choice route, you'll be reviewed for merit scholarship. The FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid, not something that you can work on right now, but something to definitely start preparing yourself for. It'll be open next October for you as a junior. And the net price calculator, it's a tool that's on our financial aid website to give you a better idea of what you can expect to potentially pay in terms of school. The biggest thing is, as we're talking and as you're learning about different colleges and learning about Mary Washington, if we use a term or phrase that you're not familiar with, ask or say something so that we can explain it to you. Because we live in this world of higher education terminology, we often don't think twice about some of the words and phrases that we use. And for students, it sometimes comes and you're like, I have no idea what that means. Stop the person who's talking, ask them the question. You know, no question should go unanswered, really. So kind of thinking about that search in the COVID world, different ways that you can engage with us and really get to know Mary Washington a little bit better. Like I mentioned, we are doing those in-person and virtual visits, information sessions. There are virtual college fairs. There will be a few that are going to be offered this spring for sophomores and juniors, so be on the lookout for those. We do virtual high school visits right now. And then of course through social media, if you are on social media, Addison, I would recommend Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever your preference for social media is, we're out there. We do have a TikTok too. So just kind of keep that in mind. You can find us, and that's another way to engage and learn about different clubs and organizations. And the handles that you see there are for all of like the main social medias, but there are for different clubs and organizations, different academic departments. A lot of folks have their own pages, groups, and profiles that you can go and check out as well. So there are a number of different ways that you can interact and still do the search while being virtual, and being virtual kind of helps in a lot of ways. And a lot of the starting of the search process typically begins in a virtual format anyway, before you take a drive to a college campus, right? But you can come up and visit us right now. Our limitation is 8 students and guests for an information session and a tour. And then you would essentially have contact with 10 people because you'll be in an information session with a counselor, and then you'd be on a tour with a student tour guide. So making sure that we're following those protocols, you will see that. Hand sanitizing stations everywhere, masking required throughout the entirety of your visit. And if you were to come visit campus right now, the tours are entirely outside. So we can't go into any other buildings other than the building where our information session is being held. And that's really for your protection and for the protection of our students that are currently on campus, like Megan, down there. So when you start working and start getting organized to get started on your applications for admission, one of the things to know is that Mary Washington offers 2 different applications. There is our own UMW application, and then we are also a member of the Common App. I'm sure you've heard about the Common App a little bit. Okay, have you started kind of searching their different essay topics and things like that too?
I haven't, but okay. I probably should.
Hey, they will actually sometime this spring, typically it is like the February timeframe, they will release the essay prompts for next year. They haven't changed them in the last like 1 or 2 years. So I don't think they'll be changing them this year, but you can get a good idea of what those look like. And I'll give you a slide later that talks kind of a little bit about essay do's and don'ts. But where you're at now is when you really want to start getting organized. Think about application filing dates, when the application is going to come available. So the applications for Mary Washington will come available for you that first week of August, typically August 1st for us. And really, since you won't have started school yet, your best time to complete applications is going to be before you start your senior year. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because it's early. You don't have to worry about, your AP English class or what's happening in pre-calc or any of those different things, right? You can focus on your applications and get them at least started and almost completed prior to starting your school classes. And then you can worry about homework assignments and projects and what you're learning in school. So it does give you about, depending on when you're starting your classes, a little bit of leeway into that start of senior year. For us, we offer 3 different types of application filing dates. We offer early decision, early action, and regular decision. Are you familiar with the difference between early decision and early action?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So of course, early decision, that binding agreement is November 1st. Early action is November 15th. Regular decision is February 1st. When we decide things, we do them on a rolling basis. So if you apply with early decision, if you apply in August, we start reading our applications in early October, and we'll start sending out decisions right away. So we don't drop mail anything, with the exception for that will be our nursing program. Are you interested in nursing? Okay. That's the only one because there's a limited number of spaces. So we want to make sure we have a look at the whole group for nursing before we send out those offers. So we send those decisions out on a rolling basis. So it could be early October, mid-October, and you're hearing an admissions decision from Mary Washington if you apply back in August and you apply with either early decision or early action. So you don't have to wait for the filing dates for that to happen. And being part of our open house today, you'll get an application fee waiver to use on the Common App. The Mary Washington app is free. So either way, it's totally up to you. We don't have a preference of one or over the other. So when you're starting on the application, I mentioned the filing dates. One of the biggest tips I can give you is to really keep a calendar of all of your important dates. Each college and university that you're going to be applying to is going to have different dates for things. Some schools' early decision filing date may be another school's early action filing date, right? So making sure that you have a spreadsheet or I typically use spreadsheets, but like a spreadsheet of everything written out of important dates of when the application becomes available, what are the different due dates for that school, keep a checklist or a list of all of the required documents for each school, because again, that's going to be different. Some schools are going to need official transcripts. Others will say upload an unofficial. Some will require scores, others won't. You'll have some that need letters of recommendation. Again, others won't. So making sure that you've got it kind of built out for each of your schools as you do that, so that you can literally check off, I've done this, 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 and this with Mary Washington. Everything looks like it's here. And then I'm going to check in with Sarah to make sure everything's there for my application, and we'll go from there, right? And the admissions committee can go ahead and review your app. When another thing to be thinking about too, and with as you're starting this process and really engaging with different schools, is think about the email address that you're using. I know you had to use an email address to register for today's event, but it's not too late to change it with us. A lot of students will go to the default of using their school email address, and right now, I don't think that that's a great idea. And the reason it being is because that's the primary way your high schools are communicating with you, right? So I want to make sure that you guys are maybe setting up a different Gmail or Yahoo Mail, something that's just for the colleges, that's some sort of combination of your first name, last name, at whatever account you decide to use, to really help you be able to kind of sort that out and check it regularly. But colleges tend to communicate a lot via email, and we don't want to bog down your school email address so that you're then missing important emails from teachers or from project mates and things like that. Knowing that email is pretty much the best way and only way a lot of people are communicating at this point. Keep track on part of your lists or on your sheet that has all of your Mary Washington stuff about logins and passwords. So every time you create an application, so if you use the Common App, you're going to have a login and password for that. But when you submit your application to Mary Washington, you're then going to get access to a portal where you can check on the status of your application. That's going to have a different login and password, right? So make sure that you're keeping track of all your different logins and passwords for each of the schools, because that'll be helpful for you as well. Okay. When you are working on those applications, making sure that you think about the special programs. For us, I mentioned nursing earlier. That is one that you have to indicate on your application and then meet additional requirements for that. We do have a separate honors program. If you're thinking about applying for the honors program, yeah. Okay. So you'll want to make sure that you indicate that on the application. It'll say, are you interested in applying to our honors program? Answer yes. That will populate an additional essay about why you think you'd be a good fit for the honors program and how you've been challenged as well. So that'll provide additional level of review in the application process. And then we also have our student transition program. There's a question regarding that. And again, if you answer yes to the student transition program, it'll populate a different, another essay that you'll have to do in addition to the personal statement. The biggest thing is with any of these programs or being test optional, test choice, we aren't mind readers in admissions. So if you don't tell us that you're interested in applying to the honors program, we are not going to review you for the honors program, right? So you need to make sure that you're taking those different steps. If you're unsure of something, if there's, something happened sophomore year or something happened freshman year, and there's context you need to add that in the application process, because we won't know unless you tell us. Is the biggest thing. And we want to know that information because we do a holistic review. So I'll talk about the holistic review in just a minute. Probably one of my favorite slides on this is test choice means test choice. Do not overthink it. You have the option to provide test scores or not, okay? So really a resource for you to go to, it's down there, it says fairtest.org. That's a list of all of the test optional schools in the country. Any school that is test optional should register with that resource so students know where they can go and still be considered for enrollment without providing SAT or ACT scores. We are not trying to trick you. We are very transparent with our merit scholarships. So what they look like for a student that provides test scores, and for a student that doesn't provide test scores, they're available on our website. So you can take a look at that and say, okay, my GPA is here. I took the PSAT and it's here. If I take the SAT or I have the opportunity, here's my score, this is where I'll fall. If you go with applying test choice, it'll be a review of your GPA, your cumulative weighted GPA, and then also the rigor of your curriculum. So taking into account any honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment stuff that you've taken will be the other factor in determining that merit scholarship. All right. So talking a little bit about that holistic review, one of the best ways that I can kind of think about and have you think about the application for admission is really with an analogy that has to do with the pizza, okay? So when you build a pizza, there are three main components to the pizza, right? So when you're applying to colleges, there's three main components to the review process. Number one is going to be for the pizza is your crust, which equates to your application. So it's physically submitting the application for admission itself. Number two is going to be your sauce. That is going to be your curriculum, how you have challenged yourself throughout high school. What choices did you make when it comes to advanced level courses? You know, taking more than just English and government senior year, even though English and government is likely all you're going to need to graduate, right? So continuing to take a full academic load. And then the cheese is going to be your grades, right? So with those three main components, you have a pizza. So with those three main components, we can make an admissions decision, right? What we do though, is we like to make a holistic review. So we're going to be looking at all of those extras. So all of your different toppings. We're going to be looking at your extracurricular involvement, your essay, your letters of recommendation. We offer an opportunity for students to interview. Did you take advantage of that interview? By the way, if you interview, there's a scholarship that goes along with it. So you want to interview, okay? Whether you've demonstrated interest with the university, all of those other factors are toppings for the top of your pizza, right? They are great. They add flavor to your pizza. They're things that we love to see, and they make your pizza better. They make your application better, but they don't substitute for missing one of those major ingredients. Like if you're really missing on the curriculum, right? Or you're really missing on the GPA. So, you know, you have the opportunity to kind of make yourself better in the application process, but you also need to make sure that you have a solid foundation as well when you're applying for the colleges. Does that make sense? Awesome. I like to talk about pizza. Pizza's delicious too. When you go to present yourself on paper, we talked a little bit for the essay, choose the topic, you go through them, look at them. You're always going to have a choice of a topic of your choice, especially with the Common App. So never fear, really, you can pick anything you want to talk about. But think and do some brainstorming. You want to talk about something that you know really well, that you don't have to really research too much. You want to make sure that you're revealing a little bit about yourself, you know, your outlook on life, your character. You can make it a story and be relatable with it. I always go with the 80-20 rule when you're thinking about your essay. 80% of that essay should be about you, and 20% of that should be the foundation of setting the stage for what you're going to be talking about, right? You would hear a number of times that, you know, I hear about lovely grandparents. Grandparents are lovely, and we know that. But when I hear about lovely grandparents, the story and what they're sharing often makes me want to admit the grandparent, right? It's not really telling me anything about the student themselves. So make sure that you're talking about yourself. This is a point where you can brag about yourself in the application. You don't have to have something shocking. I think that's a common misconception as well. You know, some of the best well thought out essays they don't go for shock value. Okay, so think about that too. Think about what you're writing about. You should make sure that you are comfortable with like anyone reading your essay, right? Not necessarily just the eyes of the admissions committee. So think about that when you're thinking about your topic too. Don't make it too revealing on yourself, if that makes sense. Some of the other do's, you know, plan time and allow to write well. Don't write your essay right in the screen. Go with a Word doc and then upload it, or a Google Doc and then upload it, so that it works well and you've checked your formatting and everything like that. And don't rush. Remember, there are typically word limits. And while it may be nice to think of a broad topic, it's a short essay. So really try and keep your focus narrow with that. We talked about remembering your audience and making sure you're writing in your own voice. It's good to have somebody edit for you, but make sure that they're not taking your voice away from you as you do that. And really just be you, you know, take time, read it, have someone read it, edit it, but make sure that you're truly yourself in there and that you're really sharing something about yourself that you want us to know that we wouldn't already see in your application for admission. Okay. One of the things that we've also been talking with students too is about COVID as a topic. You know, we've seen it as predicted. It is one of the most covered essays topics this year, but there is a section where it's the COVID community disruption section on the application for the Common App. That's your platform to talk about COVID and how it has impacted you. We knew COVID was impacting the class that just started this fall, but even more so, it's impacting the seniors this year and you at Addison as a junior, right? So there are, you know, things that may have happened. You know, a lot of us have experienced some trials and tribulations, but if it hasn't directly impacted you personally or your family personally, COVID as a topic should kind of stay a little bit clear of that, right? Because it is something that's impacting the entire world. We also wanted to kind of give you guys some tips. I mean, this says for the class of 2021, but I think it really will continue to be true over the years and years to come. And that really don't worry. We know that everybody is in the same situation. You know, we know that your extracurricular activities have been limited due to COVID. We know that there were potentially alternative grading systems for you. We know that all of your classes are online and you haven't had the opportunity to get back in a classroom yet for a lot of students in a lot of different ways. We're using that COVID lens when we're reviewing applicants, and we are really truly going to work to make the best decisions for you and not penalize anybody for something that they can't control like COVID. So keep that in mind as well. What questions do you have? Do you have any?
I don't have many. Let's see. I guess for different scholarships.
Yeah.
Opportunities, I'm really big into, like, I want to try and get as many, or not as many, but apply for a lot. And I just like, sorry, I don't really know like
how to phrase it.
Between like Mary Wash scholarships and then like outside scholarships. So will those like be available on the application? Like, I guess I'm kind of new. I don't really.
Yeah, no, it's a good question to ask about scholarships. So the merit scholarships that I mentioned that we automatically review you for, there's nothing else you need to do other than apply. Okay. So that's going to be a merit scholarship. You're in Virginia. So that's going to be between $1,000 and potentially $10,000 per year. If you apply with test scores, it's going to be based on your cumulative weighted GPA and your test scores. If you apply test optional, which you can do, it's going to be based on your GPA and the rigor of your curriculum. Okay. If you go out to our freshman scholarships page on our website, it will show you those merit scholarships and the charts that I talked about, so you know which kind of tier of scholarship you would qualify for. Okay. That's merit scholarship. That's based on academics. That's saying, hey, you did a great job in high school. Here's money for that. You then have other scholarships. So we also then have institutional scholarships, which are endowed scholarships by alumni and friends of the university. That can be for any number of things, right? They can be because you want to study in a certain academic area, you're from a certain place in Virginia, or you're from a certain state. Those scholarships are for enrolling and continuing students. Those happen a little bit later, and they have an additional application that you have to fill out. They range from a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000, depending on what it is that you're applying for. Institutional scholarships are just for Mary Washington as well, okay? Then you, Addison, have resources outside of what us as an institution are providing you. So your college counselor will probably have like a senior newsletter that goes out that will list scholarships in your community. So things that are local to Chesterfield that you'll be able to take a look at and potentially apply for. There are then also different scholarship opportunities and different website resources that are listed on our financial aid website, like scholarships.com and fastweb.com, for you to go look for like those bigger, broader scholarships like Milk and Nike and, Gatorade had scholarships when I was applying to colleges. If you're involved in, you can look for dance scholar, if you're a dance, like depending on what your extracurricular activities are, you can look for scholarships in those areas. You also then have, your closer community, right? So if you are involved in a faith-based organization outside of school, your church will likely have a small scholarship that they will typically provide to students. If you're a part of a community-based organization, they typically will have scholarships. If you have a part-time job, one of the things that people talk about all the time, like Starbucks and Chick-fil-A do a really good job, and Wegmans Corporation do a really good job of having scholarship funding opportunities, McDonald's too, of their employees, right? So depending on where you work and what type, if you have a part-time job, that kind of thing, and what you're doing, there may be scholarship opportunities for you there too. So it's not limited to just the college. When you go to fill out your FAFSA form, you'll fill out your FAFSA form, and what comes from that is an expected family contribution. So what the federal government believes that you and your family can contribute to your education, okay? So that UFC, let's just make it an easy number and say it's $5,000 a year. I have no idea what it would be for you, right? So let's just say it's $5,000. So they're saying, okay, Addison, your family can come up with $5,000 a year. Well, Mary Washington, for an in-state student that's living on campus, our cost of attendance, so not just things that we bill you for, but all the extras, your books and personal expenses and travel back and forth, we base that on about $30,000 a year, okay? So that leaves need of $25,000, okay? Your merit scholarships can help go towards that if you have that need, but it's not necessarily the only thing that can go towards that. There will be the federal Pell Grant if you're eligible for that. There's state aid that you'd be eligible for. So there are levels there, and then there are also loans that you can take out to help for school too. Does that help at all?
Yes, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay. So and like I said, don't be afraid to ask questions or look for resources. Your college counselor at your school is going to be a good resource for helping with scholarship stuff. But one of the things, and while it's somewhat uncomfortable to do, I always encourage students and parents to talk about the finances up front and early. And since you're a junior, definitely go ahead and do that, and try and have that realistic expectation of, mom and dad can provide X, but then you're going to be responsible for the remainder, so that as you're looking at schools, it'll help you in that search process, finding schools that fit what you're able to pay to go to school. Mm-hmm. Okay. And just know it's very common to have loans leaving school these days. Unfortunately, there's really no way around it unless you receive like a full ride scholarship, that there will likely be some loan pieces. I always encourage folks to go with the Stafford loan first, which is the federal loan, typically carries lower interest rates and has better forgiveness policies too. So just kind of keep that in mind. And if you have any other questions, feel free to always reach out. Okay. Awesome. I see that we had someone else jump in. It is 12:29, so we're going to take a little bit of a break here. Addison, thanks for joining for that first session. If anybody, we are going to do reboot the application tips and tricks starting at 12:30 here in just a moment. And we'll just see if anybody else pops in before I get started again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
All right. I'm going to work on getting my PowerPoint restarted. Just bear with me 1 second. And hopefully you can see that. Megan, can I get a thumbs up? We good? Okay, awesome. All right. Well, it is 12:30. We will give folks just another minute to kind of pop down in and see what see if anybody else is going to be joining us for this second session. I'm Sarah Limberg. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at Mary Wash. I'm proud Mary Washington graduate. I've got Megan with me today. Megan, if you want to wave, I know she's muted. She's down in our Admissions Welcome Center. And there's 1 or 2 other staff in there with her, which is why you can see that she is fully masked with her KN95 mask there. So making sure she is protected as well. I think we've got 1 other person that just popped in. We'll just see. All right, so you're in application tips and tricks. We're gonna go through and kind of talk about the application process. We are in the meeting format of Zoom, so you are welcome to go ahead and be on camera and unmute your mic if you want to, because we are a small group. That is totally up to you, or you can remain off camera if you would like as well. We are recording this session, so please just keep that in mind. 2, if that changes your mind on whether or not you would like to be on or off camera as well. But we'll go ahead and get started here. As you have questions, please place them into the chat and I'll be able to answer them. Or like I said, you can unmute and ask your questions that way. But really, I'd like to help you guys get started in the application process. To get a better idea, I know we have about 3 students in here. If you could just tell me in the chat if you are a sophomore, junior, or senior, that would be excellent. So that lets me know kind of which direction to go in with my presentation a little bit, because I can tailor it to where you are. Senior, okay, junior. All right, awesome. All right, awesome. So for my senior, can you let me know if you've already submitted your application or if you're still working on that? Still working on it. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of dive right in, and we're going to start with a little bit of terminology to help you guys get started in this process or work through this process. My biggest thing here is if you don't know, ask, okay? Biggest tip for you. So as you are working through this process for my junior, you are gonna be going what we call the search process. So really working to finding those different colleges or universities that are gonna be a good fit for you based on size, location, academic profile. It could be based on majors or sports teams and things like that. So really searching for a good fit for colleges of where you really can see yourself for the next 4 years. For my senior, you're working on your application, so it sounds like you've already found that Mary Washington would be a pretty good fit for you, and so that you are looking to go ahead and submit that app. For the academic profile, you hear that phrase a lot. That's talking about averages, average GPA, average SAT or ACT scores if you decide to submit those. So when we are looking at averages, you are thinking about whether or not you meet the academics of the college or university that you're looking for. You're going to hear SAT and ACT. Those are our standardized testing options for students in the application process. We are a test choice school. I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail a little bit later on, but we truly want you to know that you are not required to take your SATs or your ACTs to enroll at Mary Washington. It is your choice of whether or not you would like to submit them. You just let us know on the application for admission if you plan to apply with or without test scores. You'll hear the term self-reported often. That is talking about your academic information. So self-reporting your high school transcripts, providing us something that's unofficial, or self-reporting your testing. You'll hear that as well. I covered kind of test optional, test choice for y'all already. Thinking about a holistic review process, that's one of my slides later, but really looking at you as an applicant of more than just a GPA and test scores. It's really looking at you in a whole review. Demonstrated interest, this is something we use here at Mary Washington and a term that you'll hear a little bit more frequently. All of you right now are demonstrating interest with the university by engaging with us in our virtual open house. That is one of the ways that you can do that. But you can also demonstrate interest by attending a on-campus information session and tour if you're comfortable right now in our COVID world, but participating in other virtual events, high school visits, college fairs, engaging in email, text, or phone calls with your admissions counselors. Those are all ways that you can demonstrate interest. We'll talk a little bit about merit scholarships. These are scholarships that are based on your academics from high school. So giving you a congratulations and a little bit of gift of money to help you pay for college. The free application for federal student aid, of course, is, or the FAFSA form is something that you'll be filling out so that we can look at any need-based aid opportunities for you to help you pay for school. And you'll also hear the term net price calculator quite a bit. This is a tool that is used to help you get a better idea of what it's going to cost or estimate your costs enrolling at colleges. And this is a requirement for all colleges to have that. It'll be on their financial aid website. So one of the big things here, and like I said before, if you don't know, ask. If we are we like our terminology and acronyms in higher education. If we are saying something, you're like, I don't know what that means, stop the individual that you're talking to and tell them you're not understanding, and we'll explain it to you in a different way, because sometimes we live in the terminology and in the language all the time that we don't realize that people might not understand what we're saying. So it's always good to kind of raise that flag and say, hey, you use the word profile in a way that I'm not familiar with, or you said holistic review. What exactly does that mean again? Go ahead and ask those questions. So as you're searching for colleges, and a way to get to know Mary Washington a little bit better is to demonstrate that interest and to engage with us in different ways. So right now, like I mentioned, we have in-person and virtual visits that you can participate in. If you're coming to campus, please make sure that you're following all of our COVID protocols. We have limited our groups and do require pre-registration for any in-person activities so that we know that we're not exceeding any of the requirements for us to have in-person visits. So smaller groups, remaining masked, making sure that you're not interacting with too many people while you're on campus, that kind of thing. You will hear of virtual college fair opportunities as well. So making, they can happen via Zoom. They can happen via these cool virtual booths where you can go walk around and have an avatar. There are lots of different college fair options out there. High school visits right now are pretty much done virtually. I know most of you aren't even in school yourselves. So engaging with college reps that way, and we visit a lot of high schools across the country in virtual visits. And you can also engage with us on social media. So you see our social media handles down there on the left-hand side. And really you can, follow us on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever your preferred social media network is. That's another way that you can engage and learn more about Mary Washington in the process. We'll talk a little bit and here kind of where you can start our applications. You'll find them in two different places. We offer the common application and the UMW application. There's no preference to which application you use. So please feel free to use either or. The application for admission that Mary Wash has is free. If you're using the common app, we can definitely get you an application fee waiver for that one. Be aware of your application filing dates. We offer 3 of them, early decision, early action, and regular decision. Early decision is that binding agreement, meaning that you should only be applying to one college if you are applying early decision. Early action is an early notification process. And as you'll see, regular decision has a priority filing date of February 1. My senior, you are not too late. You can still submit your application. We are still taking them, but you'll just receive your decision a little bit later on in the process. We'll try to get as many, if not all of them, out by April 1st. That is our goal with those. So just making sure that you know your application filing date too. When you are getting started on your application, beware of the filing dates and the different types of applications that are being offered. My biggest tip is to be able to keep a calendar and or checklist or profile for each of the different colleges that you're applying to. Know what the important and key dates are. Know what, keep a checklist of required items saying, okay, I requested my high school transcript. Okay, they don't require test scores. Next up, I've got my letters of recommendation, and you can go through and check them off as you go. Think about the email address that you're using as a high school student, using your school email versus a third-party email that's a combination of your first name, last name at Yahoo or Gmail or Hotmail, whatever it might be. Because right now school email and your high school emails that's the way your high schools are primarily communicating with you, and you don't want to get all of your school stuff bogged down with college stuff. So you do want to make sure that you have a dedicated email address to receive all of your college information there. And if you haven't created that yet, we can always work to update any email addresses that you've already provided to us to make sure that we're using something that's appropriate for you. We will have a number of logins and passwords that will come to you in the application process, you know, things to keep track of. So make sure that you have a keep of list, because each college is going to have a portal where you can check on the status of your application. Each, you know, Common App is going to have its own separate login. The UMW app is going to have another login. So make sure that you are keeping track of those logins and keep them somewhere safe. You see Sammy down there, he says, did you use your full legal name? And that may seem silly, but we oftentimes have students that, you know, apply with their nickname. You know, if your name is Catherine and you apply with Kate or Katie, or if you have a hyphenated last name, but when you apply on your application, you don't hyphenate your last name, or vice versa. That happens all the time. So make sure that you're using your full legal name and providing us with any other variations on your name that you've used for documents like SAT scores or transcripts with your high school, so that we're able to match it up. But you are always to use your full name, legal name in the application process. So when you go through and you're working on your application, you're going to fill out demographic information, academic information, but you're also going to have the opportunity to apply for some special programs. For us, there are 3 programs that you can be applying for that are separate. You can apply to our pre-nursing program, the honors program, and the student transition program. For each of these, you really have to raise your hand on the application for admission and say, yes, I'm interested in these programs. For nursing, there are some additional academic requirements that you'll have to meet. For the honors program and STP, or student transition program, there will be an additional essay that you have to fill out if you select yes. The admissions counselors were not mind readers. So if you don't tell us you're interested in something, or something that's put some context in your application, if you had a rough sophomore year, you know, we don't know that unless you tell us. So we can't say, oh, I knew that you wanted to apply for the honors program, so I'm going to go ahead and review you for the honors program. You have to tell us what you mean in the application. So keep that in mind as you're working on your apps. Please hear me when I say we are test choice. We are a test optional school. I've mentioned that a number of times. Don't overthink it. We do not require test scores. You will still be reviewed for merit scholarships, whether you apply with or without your test scores. So you need to know that for Mary Washington, you don't need to travel 300 miles to find a testing location or stress out about the fact that your SAT has been canceled 4 times, okay? We are test choice. You'll find a number of different resources and other schools that are test choice. If you go to that site, fairtest.org, it'll tell you different colleges that are all, like Mary Washington, that are test choice. So really one of the biggest things that you'll want to know is that with applying to Mary Washington, the merit scholarship review still happens for you with or without test scores. Okay, that's one of the things you'll want to check on with other colleges, is whether or not they're still going to review you for merit, because sometimes there's a limitation there. But for us, if you're applying with test scores, it's going to be based on your cumulative GPA and your SAT or ACT score. If you're applying without test scores, it's going to be based on your cumulative weighted GPA and the rigor of your curriculum from your high school. So let's talk about where that falls in the holistic review process. So in the holistic review, we really look at everything, okay? So you can think about the application and how we're reviewing much like a pizza, okay? You have some basic things that need to happen, and then you've got some toppings that'll happen as well. So first and foremost, you have to have an application for admission. That's your crust. That's going to be the basis of your pizza, right? You then have your sauce. Your sauce is going to be your curriculum, how you've challenged yourself throughout your 4 years of high school, honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment courses. All of those things and all of those factors we look at in the application process. The cheese is going to be your GPA, how you've done in school throughout your 4 years of high school. You know, A's and B's, what types of grades have you gotten? Those 3 things alone make an application for admission, right? We can base an admissions decision off of that, but we want to take into consideration other factors. or your toppings. So we also look at your extracurricular involvement, which we know has been impacted due to COVID. So we'll look at that with a COVID lens, don't worry. We look at your essay, your letters of recommendation, an interview. Mary Washington offers an optional interview that you would be reviewed for an additional scholarship on. So make sure that you consider the interview process. You'll have from July before your senior year to February 1 of your senior year to interview with the university. And then demonstrating that interest, attending the virtual open houses, engaging with your admissions counselor. Those are going to all be those different toppings on top of a pizza. Now, those toppings, they're great and they're excellent and they're definitely things that we want to see, but they don't substitute for your sauce or they don't substitute for your cheese. They enhance, right? So you want to make sure that you have every part of the pizza, that you really worked hard to prepare the best application or the best pizza that's available to you, okay? When you go to present yourself on paper with the essay, so as part of the common application, there is a personal statement or essay. There are 6 choices for you to fill out with that. Really pick a topic that you know well. Take time to brainstorm. Don't type your essay directly into the prompt box. You want to make sure that what you're talking about is something that you are comfortable sharing with complete strangers, right? Because you haven't really potentially met your admissions person or the review committee. You know, think about little incidents and facts that are revealing about you and your character and your outlook on life. Don't necessarily go for shock value. We're not looking to be shocked. You don't have to have you know, the best story ever. You don't have to, you know, have overcome so much, but really just telling a story about yourself that is enjoyable for us, that reveals a little bit into who you are as a person, is what we're looking for, right? In that application process or in the essay process. Really think about this as like what we call the 80-20 rule. 80% of your essay should be about yourself, and 20% should be really setting the stage or giving background information. Think about this all the time when students write about their grandparents. That's a big topic for folks when writing about that. And oftentimes I come away knowing way more about the grandparents than I do about the student that's applied for admission. And I know most people, everybody has lovely grandparents, but make sure that you are writing something that's really going to share about yourself with the admissions committee, as opposed to telling me about somebody else in your life, okay? So some other tips for the essay itself: allow yourself time to write. Don't rush through it. Always work in a Word or Google Doc when you are starting your essay. This will help for grammar and any misspellings, things like that. Make sure you are using proper English, capitalizing words where appropriate. You would be surprised of what we see sometimes. Remember that there are some word limitations on your application essays, that you may not be able to write 5 pages, you know, but make sure you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Keep a narrow focus, and you may think, oh, having a broad topic is going to be good because I can write on everything, but really it should be a narrow topic, and really writing about one instance or one thing about yourself in the application essay. Other tips: paint a picture, show rather than tell. Remember your audience. If you're not comfortable having your parent read your essay, it may not be appropriate for the admissions committee to read. Again, you don't have to go for shock value in the essay. Write in your own voice. It is good to have another set of eyes on your essay and have somebody edit it for you, but make sure they're not taking your voice away from you. And remember to be you. You know, this whole process, the whole application process is really about being yourself and who you are. So remember, don't let that slip away in your essay itself. When thinking about COVID as a topic, you know, there is a separate section on the application called community disruption to really talk about COVID. COVID as the whole personal statement essay should not be your whole personal statement essay. You should really try and stray away from that. We see COVID is impacting everyone. Some of you may more so than others. We knew COVID was going to impact this and, you know, this freshman class this year, but more so it's impacting the seniors and the juniors that have had alternative grading systems or have been virtual for almost a year. And we know that, and we're going to use a COVID lens when we're viewing you in the application process. But if COVID has hit close to home, has affected you and your family in different ways, you can write about it in the community disruption piece. You know, we have some tips and things that we want to share with you, kind of that a gentleman that writes on admissions all the time, his name is Jeff Slingo, asked, you know, folks to give advice for the class of 2021. And I think it's relevant for younger classes as well. You know, don't stress about this. You know, we are really going to work with you and try and do what's best for our students and our community and our applicants. You know, you have a way to engage with more colleges than ever, and more so than a lot of other students have because of our COVID world that we've been living in, and that you can do things virtually. So take that opportunity to kind of grow your list and look around and engage with us differently through Zoom or WebEx, through text messages or email. Admission staff have really tried to make themselves available to students in a lot of different ways to kind of meet you where you are in this process. And the last one kind of talks a little bit more about the SAT. You know, if we tell you, again, don't worry about sitting for the SAT unless a school tells you that they require those scores, because we don't. And there are thousands of schools out there that aren't requiring those SAT or ACT scores. So make sure that you're looking and factoring that into kind of your admissions decision and asking those questions of whether or not you feel comfortable sitting for a test before you go and do that too. All right, let's open it up. We have about 10 minutes or so for questions. So if you guys have questions, you are welcome to put those in the chat. So you can contact your personal admissions counselor if you need help with the application process. Is there a specific question on the application that you have, or is it completing it?
Actually, it was just getting started with it.
Okay, so you can really, depending on your high school, you may have a college counselor or a school counseling office that has someone designated to help with application processes. Are you a junior?
I'm actually a transfer student from a community college.
Okay, did you sit in on the transfer session earlier?
I went to the Q&A for the transfer, but I just wanted to ask just in case.
Yeah, if you want to connect with Jose, who hosted that Q&A, he can help you because your application process is going to look a little bit different than first year students.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? And again, you can put them in the chat or you can unmute your mic. I'm going to stop sharing real quick. All right, well, I really thank you guys for joining me today. That's kind of it on my end for my presentation, but feel free to reach out. I'm gonna pop my email in the chat for you. So if you have any additional questions, you are always welcome to email me. I can get you connected with your personal admissions counselor, whoever that might be in our office. And thanks for joining.